All right, my live. I have told no one about this live. If anyone is here, can someone do a test for me? Is my audio coming through? If you can comment if my audio is coming through. Test, yeah, can you hear my audio? Is it Eagle? Thanks, man. How are you? Beautiful. Thanks, Andrew. Welcome. Welcome, everyone. This is my first live that I've ever done on this channel. And yeah, I just wanted to talk about everything on cameras, but I've asked a few questions on Instagram that people would actually want some answers to. So I'm going to go through some of these questions. Probably a good time to do this. How is everyone doing? You can comment in the comment section. It's Thursday here, Thursday morning. Where are you guys from? Let me know. I'd really like to know, and we can have a bit of a discussion back and forward. Geez, yes. So I got about 25 questions-ish. Mehdi, thank you. So why don't you try and check my profile? Okay. This one's like, why don't you come check my profile? Give it a like if you don't mind. Thank you, bro. I'll check your profile out. I have yet A7 IV. Is the HD 120 frames good enough, or upgrade to FX3 or A7S III? Arthritic1, Detroit, Michigan, US. How you doing, man? So yeah, A7 IV in 120 frames per second, in 1080. Look, the A7 IV is slightly better in the 1080 than the A7S III, than the FX3, FX6. It seems to be just slightly sharper from what the results I've been getting myself. How to, guy? What's up, my man? Hope you're doing well. We need to catch up. We need to do a collab. What was it talking about? 1080 at 120 frames per second. Yeah, it's good. Look, it's better than the A7 III. If you don't have a problem with that, then that's fine. It is definitely not like 4K 120 like what you get in the FX3 and A7S III. But in all honesty, I haven't had to use, in all my professional work, I haven't had to use 120 frames per second. I've used 50 frames per second, yes, mainly for the fact that there was a hero shot that I needed to slow down, do a small track to the right or track to the left, and just slow it down. So it was very basic. So when it comes to slow motion, I don't generally use it in a lot of my professional work. I mean, if you are a wedding videographer, I know a lot of wedding videographers that literally shoot slow motion the whole time. Look, if that is the case, then I would suggest go for the A7S III or FX3, because you know that that's going to have 4K 120. You do have to realize the A7 IV does have that APS-C crop, so you need to account for that with a wider lens. But if you only shoot 1080, then the 1080 HD 120 frames per second is going to be absolutely perfect enough for you. MediRez, thank you very much for that small donation. What do you think of the R5C better than the A1? Oh, that is a tough one. So the R5C, just for context, who haven't seen, was announced last night by Canon. It's a phenomenal camera. I have a mate, Andrew Murphy. You've probably seen him. I did a live with him last night, but Andrew, he has the C70. He's been with Canon for a very long time. And the R5C is very similar form factor, very similar specs to the C70, but it obviously has your 8K 60, which is incredible. So you can pretty much film 8K 60. I got to remember to look at the camera. I'm looking at myself on my screen. So the R5C has 8K at 60, but you also have to, I think, external power, which is fine because I use V-Lock batteries with my cameras anyway. So that should be fine if you're used to using cinema cameras and V-Lock batteries. Even gold mount batteries, you can still power it through that. But 8K for as long as you can record is pretty impressive. The one baffling thing, Mehdi, that I saw is there's no IBIS. Whereas the Sony A1 obviously has the IBIS, it also has a faster readout sensor. So it has a stacked sensor. So you're going to get less rolling shutter with that higher frame rate. So if you are a sports and wildlife photographer or videographer and you've got a whole bunch of fast moving subjects, personally, I think the A1 is going to be a better choice, but it really depends on what you're going to be shooting. So Rove with Reynolds said, I'm considering moving to full frame. Your thoughts on the A7C or A7 IV? I'm currently using Canon systems. Okay. Why not consider the Canon R6 or R5? Why would you like to move to the Sony system? That's probably a good question first. And it depends on what kind of glass have you got with Canon? Because glass is probably the most expensive thing when it comes to switching camera systems. Because I started in Nikon in my photography days, and then I had a whole bunch of Nikon glass switched over to Sony, and I had to sell everything, and it was a pain to switch over. So you just have to be aware of that. Andrew McDonald says, random question. I am severely colorblind. I do not want to do color grading. So would you recommend S-Cinetone? Sony Picture Profile 11, would the results be good enough? Absolutely, Andrew. S-Cinetone is phenomenal. I'm shooting on S-Cinetone now. If you've seen my YouTube channel, all my YouTube videos, my talking head stuff is all S-Cinetone. Until recently, last probably 5 videos with the A7 IV, I've switched over to S-Log 3. But before that, with the FX6, S-Cinetone. S-Cinetone is phenomenal. I absolutely recommend you could just drop it straight in and you'll be perfectly fine. Yes, I do tweak the colors a little bit with S-Cinetone. Sometimes drop my blacks. It really depends on the scene. But S-Cinetone, Andrew, would be perfectly fine to utilize. How to guy, what's up? So you can shoot 4K 120 on the Sony A7S III, fake slow motion up to 480 with the latest DaVinci Resolve 7. Yep. Cool flow. So that is very true. And also you've been able to do that in After Effects for quite some time as well. I did a cookie drop video where I actually slowed my 240 frames per second down to, I think it was 480 or something, or even maybe even 720 or 960. I slowed it down quite a lot in After Effects, and it works very well. I'm very shocked with the results because of the software, and it sort of matches in between the frames with motion blur as well, and it sells it. It's actually quite good. So yeah, definitely a good one to bring that one up. Danny Black, what's up, my man? Hope you're doing well. So Rove with Reynolds. I hope I'm saying all these names right. I'm afraid of overheating issues with Canon systems. Buying glass is not an issue. My Canon system will be utilized by other members of the family, so it's not an issue. Okay. So overheating, that is definitely true. Sony has actually done a very good job with overheating inside their cameras. Canon are only just starting to address that literally last night with the Canon R5 C that just released, which is very interesting. So hopefully we will see zero overheating issues with the Canon system to go forward, which is good. It brings a little bit more to the table and hopefully pushes Sony, Nikon, Fuji a little bit further to create better things, and Panasonic as well. But if you still are considering the Sony systems, I'm a Sony man. I use whatever camera is best for the job. So I don't say I'm 100% Sony, because I'm not. If I need a red or an RE for a particular job, I'll 100% go for that. But it all depends on what works best for my workflow for that current job. But going back to your question on the A7C and A7 IV, without a doubt, A7 IV is a much better camera in almost every single aspect than the A7C. So if you are choosing between those two cameras, don't have a budget issue, I would choose the A7 IV hands down. Creator Melvin, what's up, man? Are you using a diffusion filter? Yes. Oh, you could probably tell by this light right here. So I'm using the Black Allure Mist by Neistat. So I use panel filters. Hang on, I'll see if I can. This is probably not. I'll take this off so you guys can see. There we go. So you can see the difference between the diffusion filter. So I use a matte box, and you can see the diffusion filter here. This is the Black Allure Mist. It is a little bit more expensive. So if you do get a diffusion filter, you're probably going to get used to regular circular ones you can put on front of the lens. But I use the matte box mainly for the fact that it's got the French flag at the top. So that'll block a lot of light that goes directly into the sensor. I'm just used to using filters, panel filters, because you can stack them as well. But cinema cameras are usually with diffusion matte boxes. So yeah, Black Allure Mist. That's the 1/8 strength. But you can see the difference there once I put the panel filter back on. It's a bit of a pain in the ass. So Danny asked, what was your favorite product you reviewed in 2021? Okay. Favorite product I reviewed in 2021. That is a very, very good question. I would probably have to say, oh, that is a really tough question. Favorite product that I've reviewed is probably the one that I've literally bought and that I'm filming on right now is the A7 IV. I absolutely love going back to a smaller camera, mainly for the fact that, I'll show you. So obviously I am a cinema camera shooter. I shoot on the FX6, and having a smaller camera like the A7 IV now, literally I can take it to so many more different places and not have to worry about carting around a full box. Like I've made a full custom box for my FX6, and it's a bit of a pain in the ass to travel with as well. And I think the A7 IV would have to be my favorite product to review because of, I'm just going back to that smaller size as well. There's a time and place, obviously, for my FX6, for my commercials and stuff. But yeah, I think the A7 IV would have to take the crown on that one. But I think the hook vest is probably one of my second favorite. It's been an incredible piece of machinery. So hook vest is like your easy rig. So it's the big rest rig thing, chuck camera on there, holds it. Yeah, you know what I'm talking about. Darman Deflen, I'm assuming that's French or something. Hello, I am thinking of getting A7 IV first. Pro camera, any type, good for beginners with stock lens, you think? Look, A7 IV is a fabulous camera, but using just the kit lens, and if you're talking about the 28-70 kit lens by Sony, I would recommend try and at least get the 28-75 Tamron lens or the 24-70 Sigma lens. Try and get a 2.8. You will notice a massive difference in your shots when you change lenses, because bodies are great, but lenses is what actually makes the image look tons better. Like you can see the depth of field on me right now. I'm using the 24 G Master. You wouldn't get this kind of depth of field with, an f4 or f5.6. Nick Emmanuel, can you tell me a little bit more about the tilter cage for the A7 IV? Is there a reason you went tilter instead of small rig? I know tilter has a bit more modified looks. Look, the reason why I went the tilter cage is I had the A7S III before, and I assumed that the A7 IV would fit inside the A7S III cage, and it does with a little bit of modification. I did a video on that one, and yeah, it only just fits. But yeah, obviously you do have to have that modification. And because I've used it before, I knew a whole bunch of mounting points that I actually really liked, and the small rig just didn't have some of those mounting points. But, much of a muchness there. Most of the time, I am pretty much throwing a base plate on there with some rails and a top handle. And you can pretty much do that with any sort of any rig really. But one of the biggest ones is Tilter looks tons better than a small rig one, but you know, that's completely subjective with that one. So Rover Reynolds says, thank you, Jason, that dev helps. I heard that the Canon R5 C is using older autofocus compared to the R5. Okay. I honestly haven't heard about that one. It could be just the dual pixel autofocus. Maybe the R5 has that quad pixel autofocus. I'm not 100% sure, but in all honesty, when it comes down to cinema cameras, generally manual focus lenses are used anyway, so focusing isn't really an issue. But it really depends on what you want to use the R5C for. They've really designed it for cinematographers in mind this time, mainly for the fact that it has that fan, it's got 8K, it also has time code, a specific time code in and out, just like my FX6 has time code as well. I've used that a fair few times when I've done some conferences. I needed the sound guy to link into my time code with his little tentacle. So that's been very, very handy when you actually work with the crew. And hopefully, I don't know if they've got shutter angle, but I was talking with Andrew last night, and a cinema camera must have shutter angle. It's like, it's a small thing, but it makes a big difference. When you actually switch from 25 frames per second, you just set it to 180-degree shutter. So whatever frame rate you choose, 30 frames per second, 60 frames per second, it will always do 180-degree shutter. So it'll always double that frame rate. You don't even have to worry about it. Whereas the photography cameras, you actually have, you know, 1/50 or 1/60. And when you go up to 60 frames per second, it will stay at 160. You actually have to go to 1/20th to get that twice the frame rate, 180-degree shutter. So I think the cinema camera R5C should have shutter angle. Okay, Matt Gillard said, couldn't agree more. Thanks, Matt. Welcome, welcome. Tyson, hey bro, killing it on YouTube game lately. What are your favorite videos to make? One of my favorite videos to make, Tyson says. What are my favorite videos to make? Pretty much the tutorials that I've been doing on the A7 IV have been really fun. But I really love lens reviews because I love testing the differences between a lot of the lenses, because some of these budget lenses that I received just blow my mind how good they actually are. Like, I'm shooting on the G Master 24 millimeter f1.4, but I received the Viltrox f1.8 24, and it's very similar quality. Like, the only difference is probably the clickable aperture and the f1.4 versus f1.8. But lens reviews I love doing them. They're just great. Do Sony A7 IV oversample video better than A7S III? Currently thinking to switch. Okay, so if you, sorry, I can't read your name. I think it's in Chinese or Taiwanese. Yeah, so if you currently have the A7S III and you're thinking of switching to the A7 IV, I personally probably wouldn't. There isn't really much to switch over to the A7 IV from the A7S III, but if you don't have any camera and you go straight to the A7 IV, perfectly fine. Because you're going to be missing that 120 frames per second. You're going to be missing that one-to-one readout. So the A7S III has got a really fast sensor readout. So you're going to have less rolling shutter and just an overall cleaner image because it has that one-to-one readout. It's not trying to downsample, but having that 7K downsample to 4K gives you a sharper image for sure. I'm going to be releasing a video on the A7 IV versus the A7S III and the FX6 and showing you the differences, what that 7K downsample to 4K actually looks like. And it's great. I've actually used the A7 IV in my last 2 commercials, and it's done such a really good job. But yeah. Yeah, Michael says no IBIS though. Thoughts? So when it comes to the R5C having no IBIS, look, if you are a cinematographer, you're used to having no IBIS because a lot of cinema bodies will have built-in ND filters, except Reds. Reds, weirdly enough, don't have inbuilt ND filters. So you actually have to use your matte box and drop in ND filters, which is a bit annoying, and they don't have IBIS. But generally, cinematographers will have a full rig, and they don't need to worry about IBIS. Yeah, it's really interesting why they did that, because it is a hybrid camera and not a cinema. Like the FX6 is built for cinematographers in mind, you know, who want to focus just solely on video. So you can understand that there's no IBIS in there, but you know, photographers like to do slow shutter speeds, and it can make a big difference. But yeah, it's really interesting why it doesn't. Ah, there you go. Velour TV says it has shutter angle, waveforms, and false color. I did see it has waveforms and false color. I'm very, very happy that it does. False color is probably my favorite feature when it comes to shooting video, because that is honestly, please learn false color. That is the best way to expose your image. Using the multimetering down the bottom, it only gives you an overall idea of what your exposure is like. False color literally gives you the exact points of what actually is focused. So you can work on your contrast ratios so much better. So R5C, Canon, you're doing such a great job. It's awesome. Cody Montgomery says, how does the A7 IV compare to the A7S III when it comes to low light? Look, I did a video with the A7 IV versus the FX6, and the FX6 has a very similar sensor to the A7S III, if not the same. And the A7 IV is cleaner at the lower end. When it gets to 12,800 and you got that dual base of the FX6 and A7S III, that's when the A7S III, you know, takes off. So if you are, I know a lot of wedding photographers or wedding videographers that they don't have control over the light, and you need to chuck it into that second base and really raise those levels. The A7S III is king. But anything below that, the A7, it's not anything up to debate. The A7 IV is better. Because of that 7K downsampled to 4K, it's minimizing the grain or the digital noise, and it looks so cool. It's so clean. It's great. Thank you so much. Super helpful. No problems. Heard low light is almost as good as the A7S III. Yeah, I just talked about that. R5C with RAW. It is a perfect gimbal camera versus FX3. Okay, so this is interesting. So in my opinion, look, I think it's better than the FX3. But hold up. Hold up. False color. I absolutely love false color. Shutter angle. It's got shutter angle, which is what one of you guys have just said. And it does 8K, 8K 60. That could be a big difference for some people. Like, I know a lot of people who have the R5 and don't shoot 8K. It is a bit of a numbers game, and it is a little bit overrated at the moment. It does future-proof yourself, but honestly, just in terms of specs and stuff, the R5C is better than the FX3. But in my honest opinion, I love the image that comes out of the FX3, mainly for the fact that, same again, it's a 12 megapixel sensor. So I think it's like a 10.1 megapixel when it comes to your 16:9 shooting ratio. And it's a cleaner image. It's a faster readout sensor, so less rolling shutter. And you also have the ability to do that 12-bit RAW out to an Atomos Ninja 5 as well. So, but yeah, it depends on the job as well. Danny. I've been using the A6500 since 2017, just about ready for an upgrade. Have you heard of rumors of the A7000 in 2022? Yeah, I've heard a lot of rumors about the A7000. I've been wanting Sony to do a higher end APS-C camera for a very, very, very long time. And the very interesting thing about the world right now is that silicon chip shortage. So that's slowing everyone down in production. And it is quite concerning when Sony has halted the production on the A6500 and the Sony ZV-E10. Like, Sony ZV-E10 is only just a new APS-C camera, and they've halted production on that just to save the parts for, you know, the A7 IV and all the other newer cameras that are coming out. So whether we see an A7000 this year is very difficult to say. And I feel like it's highly unlikely because of this whole global situation at the moment. Velo TV says, I've been with Canon for a long time, but I'm thinking about switching to the FX3 and A7 IV. I have the R5, but I don't know if I'm really impressed with the R5C. Yeah, okay. Look, if you have the R5 and you have that firmware update where it doesn't overheat, I think the R5 is good enough. The R5C just takes it just to that next level, and of what the R5 should have been, sort of. Especially because the R5, they marketed that towards videographers, like hands down. It's a fabulous photography camera, but they just said 8K, 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 because it was the race to 8K at the time. But switching to the FX3, that's same thing again. It comes down to lenses. It depends on what kind of lenses you've got. If you have a whole bunch of really nice RF glass, then absolutely, that's going to be hard to sell all those off and keep the same amount of money. But switching over, like, I love the FX3. It's a fabulous camera. So is the A7 IV. Look, you choose any system at the moment, you're not going to go wrong, to be honest. Thanks, my man. Great live stream. Danny Black, great answer. Very insightful. Thank you. Richard and Gloria Sullivan. I got the A7 IV, and out of the camera, JPEGs are just nuts. I'm using the Tamron Trio. So the Tamron Trio would probably be the 17 to 28, 28 to 75, and 70 to 180. Do you have the new 28 to 75, Richard and Gloria? You're probably Richard. The new 28 to 75, yeah, fixes a lot of the issues that the old 28 to 75 had. But man, I've 28. I've got the Tamron Trio as well, and it's phenomenal. It's great because you got that wide open f2.8 aperture, and you've literally got from 17 millimeters all the way up to 180. No, you don't. So you have the older 28 to 75, which is the same one that I've got, and it's phenomenal. As long as you've done the firmware update, because there were a few autofocusing issues with the older firmware in the 28 to 75. So just go into your camera settings and make sure you check if you're up to date with that firmware. But fabulous, fabulous lens. Feru71 says, love the content. Bro, nice gains. Nice gains. Get that one a lot. Thanks, bro. Appreciate it. So, Danny, if the A7000 does come out this year, I'll be getting it. I'll be absolutely, man. Like, honestly, I've been waiting for a high-end APS-C camera, and if there is one, I will pick one up straight up. I've said it in so many videos. I really love APS-C systems. Actually, that is a big thing between the Canon C70 versus the Canon R5 C, is that the Canon R5 C is full. The C70 is Super 35, so this APS-C side sensor. And the image quality that comes out of the C70, the Super 35, phenomenal, because it's got that dual gain sensor as well. So if you don't know what a dual gain sensor is, essentially the easiest way to explain this, it captures more details in the highlights for one part of the gain, and the bottom part captures a lot more of the shadows. So it gives you more dynamic range, but it is limited to the frame rate and all that kind of stuff. But APS-C is still not dead. Hopefully. I'm not sure how you say your name. Is it Elias DeFraz? Heyo, Sigma 24 to 70, 2.8 G, D's nuts. Yeah, man, that's a good lens. The 28-4 to 70 2.8 is a fabulous lens. It's probably better than the G Master and the Tamron, mainly for the fact that the image quality is better and the price is less than the G Master, but a little bit more than the Tamron. Nick, any word on the Tamron 35 to 150, 2 to 2.8 is going to be available? I thought it was already available. Oh, it's not available yet. Look, Tamron contacted me to do a review on that lens, and the only reason why I said no is for the fact that I don't really have as much time to do that at the moment. My commercial space is going pretty hectic, and I want to try and make reviews that I want to make, and that just didn't fit within my projection at the point in time. But yeah, the 35 to, what is it, the 150, f2 to f2.8, that's crazy. The Tamron are doing such a good job. The great thing about Tamron is that Sony actually own partial amounts of that company, so they have a lot of swing in what lenses they actually release. And yeah, that's just an interesting fact. I don't know if you guys know that. It is available and just impossible to find. Yeah, okay. Look, it could be, I don't know if it's got anything to do with the global chip shortage, if there's any components in that lens. But literally every industry, there's a shortage of everything. Damn, building houses, for instance, even meat at my store, there's a shortage. So yeah, 2022 is going to be an interesting year, because I know there are a lot of people anticipating a whole bunch of newer items coming out, but you know, we're all just getting out of a very tough time, and I feel like it's difficult for companies to try and, you know, get a whole bunch of products and release them out. So it's gonna be a tough year. It's gonna be an interesting one. Farouz said, if I buy A7 III instead of the A7 IV, I will get buyer's remorse. Okay, that big sensor is tempting. The size isn't everything, I suppose. Can I get a professional opinion? It depends on if you're going to be using the R3 for photos, or the R4 for photos or videos. Honestly, if you're doing videos, A7 IV will kill the A7 III. For photos, you do have that higher resolution on that R3 sensor, but the autofocus system in the A7 IV is superior because it has that newer processor as well. So, you know, in all honesty, I would sway towards the A7 IV instead of the A7 III. Is A7 IV available to record very long hours of sessions like an 8-hour event? Ange WK. So yes, it can, but the problem is you'll need to power the camera for that 8 hours. If you are recording, it depends on what recording format you're using as well. You do have to flip screen out. If you are actually doing that, I know for a fact that if you use a dummy battery, power through that dummy battery, you can pretty much record indefinitely. It's great. No overheating. But if you are using the battery will heat up. The battery won't last 8 hours as well. So you're going to have to swap the batteries out. If you trickle charge with an external battery, it still could overheat because it is generating a bit of heat. So that's a very difficult question. But yeah, if you do use a dummy battery, you'll probably get the 8 hours out of it. Milan made the switch from the A6300 to the Panasonic S5 because Sony refused to bring out affordable 10-bit camera. Must I say, through the differences between APS-C and full frame? Yeah, absolutely. Look, honestly, going from the A6300 to the Panasonic S5 is a massive jump. You go from 8-bit to 10-bit. You go from APS-C to full frame. You go from average IBIS to extremely good IBIS. So that's pretty interesting move. In terms of autofocus, that's when you do take a little bit of a hit. Sony does win in autofocus there, but you know, it's much of a muchness. It depends on what you're filming. If you're filming something like this, who cares about autofocus? It's not like I'm moving forward and back. But, you know, if you are constantly showing the camera bits and pieces, then autofocus could be a big thing for you. Harsh Basfar? Sorry, man. Sorry, I butchered your name. Sorry. Hi, Jason. Love your videos. Thanks, man. Appreciate you here. Just got the A7 IV and setting it up. I'm going to do a test video. I have the 24 to 105 f4 lens, which is pretty good, but I wonder if I need something wide for 4K 60. Yeah. So this is the FX6 with the 24 to 105. 24 is fabulous. It's just enough for almost every circumstance besides wide establishing shots. But if you get a prime lens, you could probably get away with the 20mm Sony f1.8, but I've got an APS-C lens. So if you know the, I'll get it out. So I recently did a video. So this is the Sigma 16mm APS-C lens. So I did run into a few issues with that crop in 4K 50 because I had the 35mm and it pushes into a 50mm. It was way too tight. This is a 16mm. When you use APS-C in that crop mode, it goes to about a 24mm, and it's an f1.4. So this is very equivalent to the G Master in the APS-C range. So I would probably suggest maybe invest in APS-C lenses because they are cheaper when it comes to having a smaller wide angle lens. Richard and Gloria Sullivan, can I check the Tamron lens firmware from the camera? Can you tell me how to do that? Yeah, man. Look, this is a good one. So pretty much you open your camera, you go into your settings. So, I'm going to about run out of battery on this one. So go over to, I don't know, I can't remember on the A7 IV. I think it's right down to the bottom where it's like a little suitcase. I think it's a yellow option. Maybe. Try and find it somewhere, but usually it will have, let me see, this. So you got to find this setting. So can you see it's got the body firmware and it's also got the lens firmware? Find that setting. That happened to be, so this is the A7 III. And it's, see that little suitcase sign? Yeah. So find that suitcase sign and try and find the version. So that's how you can tell the version of firmware that's in your camera and lens. And what you essentially do is go onto the Tamron website, download the firmware, and you can chuck it onto an SD card. So you throw the firmware onto your SD card, put it into your camera, load it up, or you can actually tether this directly to your laptop computer and do the firmware through that. And that's how you update your lenses. But definitely, please check all your lenses, everyone, and make sure the firmware is up to date because they could have done faster autofocus, changed a few bugs inside there. It's definitely worth having a check in some of your older lenses. Even if you've bought some old lenses, definitely check the firmware, see if there's any updates for it. Zach Brown, what's up, man? How are you? Appreciate the A7 IV content. Your videos save me time figuring out everything myself. Yeah, man. I'm glad. Josh Turnermile. G'day, mate. How are you going? Yeah, man. Good. Thanks for joining in. Edward Scott. What up, everybody? Just picked up the A7 IV. Don't know if I should pair it with the second A7 IV or FX3. I want 2 cameras set up for doc interviews. Honestly, go the FX3. If you have the money and to have the A7 IV and FX3, you have the best of both worlds. The color science is different. I did try and match up the A7 IV to the FX6, and the color science is actually quite different. But you just have to be aware of that. And just make sure you're able to grade that. If you can't grade it, you may have a few difficulties trying to match it, but you should still be fine. S-Cinetone in both of them look very similar though. It's actually S-Log, which is really interesting. Karlinski, literally ordered my A7 IV today. Man, super excited. That's good. Millie, yep. Thanks, Danny. Hit that like for Jason. Check out Sigma F. Yeah, no problems, Hush. GB Walter. Hey, okay, Jason. Why all this chat about crop mode on the APS-C full frame cameras? Why hasn't Sony released an APS-C? Yeah, man. I know. I really want Sony to release a high-end APS-C camera. The last high-end APS-C camera was the FS5. The FS5, FS7 as well. The FS7 was but they're both cinema cameras in that crop sensor. They replace that with the FX6 and FX9, but they haven't got a smaller APS-C camera, which I'm still got the old Sony A6000. But yeah, I really hope Sony do release an A7000 or a high-end APS-C camera. It is due. The really difficult thing of them releasing a higher-end APS-C camera is that they're going to have to match 4K 60, and that could take a lot of sales off the A7 IV, A7S III, because 4K 60 is pretty much all you would really need for a lot of professional work. So yeah, that's really interesting. Ange WK said, I wonder if recording an external recorder like the Atomos would help reduce the rolling shutter during run and gun shooting sessions. It doesn't, unfortunately. So the sensor, so essentially what the Atomos Ninja 5 does is it, whatever the sensor captures, it will capture what the sensor is capturing. In terms of that rolling shutter, no, it doesn't actually change the performance of the sensor readout, unfortunately. James, my man, how are you? Welcome back. He just replied to Walter and said, I bet Sony is waiting to develop a better APS-C sensor before releasing the A7000. Yeah, man. Like I said, like the FS5 and FS7s were incredible cinema cameras, and they still are. But yeah, if they release an APS-C camera that has 4K 60, it could take a lot of sales away from the higher end ones, which is fine. I'm absolutely all for Super 35 APS-C. Full frame isn't everything, that's for sure. No problems, Richard. Harsh said, how tall are you and what's your workout routine? So I'm 6'4". I'm really tall. I work out every day because I had been a PT for 12 years. So my background is health and fitness, and I've only just merged into full-time video work in the past few years. I was a photographer for a bit more before video. But yeah, unfortunately, fitness and health, it takes many years. So I've been training myself for 19 years since I was 19. Does that work out? No, it doesn't work out. 17 years. I'm 36. I'm old. But yeah. Danny, have you played Spike? What's Spike Ball, man? Is Spike Ball like volleyball? I don't know. I haven't gone through any of these questions on Instagram as well. So I'll bring up those Instagram questions. Fred Fredrickson said, I just ordered the Thanos SE. Any tips you would recommend once paired with the RSC2? So the Thanos SE, I'm literally just making a video about this today. So this attaches to one of my chest rigs, and essentially it's just a gimbal stabilizer, and it just allows you to hold your gimbal for much longer. So this could be really good for wedding videographers, and anyone who needs to hold the camera for an extended period of time, anyone who doesn't have a lot of upper body strength. This is phenomenal. Like this is probably one of the best ones I've actually reviewed because it's small, it's compact. I did put it through a professional commercial as well, and I was pleasantly surprised by how well it performed. Sure, I don't like to use just a gimbal and a camera. I like to have an external monitor and pass out video feed as well, but it still performed fabulous. So Thanos SE is great. There's a reply on the Spike Ball. Okay, yeah, I'll have to look it up. Damen Deflern. Deflern? Yeah, I think it is. Sorry if I'm butchering your name. Hello, regarding my second lens after the kit lens, I was thinking of saving up for the 24-105. Do you think that's a good lens for a beginner? Absolutely, man. So the 24-105 is limited to an f4 aperture. It does have OSS as well, so you do have a little bit more stability if it comes to photos and videos. It really depends on if you are a photographer or videographer. Most photographers will try and get something Well, it depends on what you're photographing as well, but I do recommend getting, I'm a prime lens user. I absolutely love prime lenses. It just depends because I love having a wider aperture for that ability of having more low light to be able to separate your subject from the background. It just gives you a little bit more versatility when it comes to storytelling. But yeah, it really depends on what you shoot in the end, Darman. But yeah, 24 to 105, fabulous anyway. Oh, video. Music videos. Oh, okay. So music videos are very, very low light situations. Majority of music videos, depending on the genre as well. Look, in terms of camera dancing, I know a lot of cinematographers like to do camera dancing in music videos, and zooming in and out can be a very, very popular option. If you're doing a whole bunch of rap videos, phenomenal. But F4 for low light is very difficult. You're going to have to rely on higher ISOs or lighting up your subject as best as possible so you don't touch that ISO. An f2.8 zoom lens would be great if you could, but yeah, 24 to 105 is still pretty damn good. Sambo. What's up, my man? I'm thinking of going to SAE Film School in Sydney. Would you recommend it? Yeah, man. So honestly, I went to Griffith Film School, graduated last year, and I have experience in the field and also in the YouTube world. So I've kind of got experience in all three to give my honest opinion. And I loved film school, but I was the old guy in film school. And that was very difficult as well. But what you learn in there is, I'd like to say it's priceless. It's not. You're paying a whole bunch of money to learn all this stuff. But I made so many professional contacts. I learned how film sets actually worked. I was implemented on film sets. And if I didn't actually do that, YouTube doesn't really teach that. You actually have to go out and do it. The great thing about Griffith Film School was very hands-on. So I don't have any experience or know anyone that's been to SAE. I know like QUT in Queensland and Brisbane is a very tech-based one, and they have a film school. They were more theory-based, so they didn't have as many, hands-on things. But it depends on what cameras they use at SAE as well. We used ARRI Alexas and ARRI Amiras, ARRI Classics, which is great. The best gear you can get. It's phenomenal. So Darman Flynn, I want to do my own music videos rather than use stock footage. Yeah, man. Stock footage is very difficult to use when creating music videos, but it's a great option as well. Tommy, what's up, man? I ordered the A7 IV. I'm new for photography. Which one all-round lens would you recommend for me? Just into photography. No specific interest. Yeah, man. So a one all-round lens. It depends on your budget, but this is my all-time favorite lens. It is the Sony 35mm G Master, but it's very, very, very expensive. In terms of all-round lens, it really depends, but a 35 or a 50mm lens, I would absolutely recommend. That focal range, in my honest opinion, is actually very good for everything on a general. So, I mean, you could probably go the 55 f1.8 Zeiss lens. That's pretty damn good. The full frame Sony 50mm f1.8 is very average. It's a very average performing lens. But look, if you're tight on the budget, you can't go wrong with it anyway. Harsh says, thanks for all your answers. Do you use an ND filter or a variable ND filter for your video work? If so, do you have a recommendation? So it depends. If I use the FX6, it's got built-in variable ND filters. So I use that one. But if not, I use the Freewell variable ND filters, which should be hanging around here somewhere. So variable ND filters I prefer is better for workflow. Plus you can dial in just a little bit more. Hard stop ND filters where you have to put one ND filter on and change another. Doesn't give you as much versatility in terms of the perfect amount of exposure, but Yeah, freewell are generally the option I go for, mainly for the fact that they're quite budget and they're actually very good quality as well. So, and they've lasted me quite a while. Timid says 35 mil is solid. Absolutely, man. What do you think about the 24 to 70? Is that the G Master 24 to 70 or the Tamron, the Sigma 24 to 70? I think you're talking about the G Master, Timid. James is replying. Oh, yep. Yeah. So he's just saying, just ask a graduate from the program. That's a very good idea, man. Is it Milan or Milan? I think SAA Film School depends on the location. Yeah, absolutely. Here in Germany. Oh, he's German. Yeah, cool, man. I think the biggest thing about film schools as well, it depends on how much you want to learn. Like I went to the same film school as obviously everyone else in the same film school, and it all depends on what you cut. So like I came out with a whole bunch of information, created my own business plan and went towards that, whereas other students didn't do that. So it really depends on what you want to get out of it, how hard you actually want to work, and what you want to achieve, like the end goal. My end goal was get that certificate, get as much knowledge as physically as possible, and work my way into the industry. Contact a whole bunch of people. That's the biggest thing. And that's one of the biggest things that they actually push is contact a whole bunch of people. Put yourself out there. But the biggest thing is don't just put yourself out there with zero skills. Pick up a camera and just learn everything about lighting. Jump on someone's photography set and say, hey man, can I pick up your lighting gear for you and carry it, and just learn what you do, and you could see what kind of lighting techniques they do. If you learn everything, you can exactly what you want to specialize in as well, because whoever goes to film school isn't just going to be a cinematographer. There's a whole bunch of writers, directors, gaffers, producers, production design assistants, production design people. There's so many different fields you can get into. So it really depends on what you want to get out of it, because you can choose specific subjects as well within film school. But yeah, it really depends in terms of that film school. So Timid said, yeah, that's G Master. Okay. Yeah, so this is an interesting one, Timid. So the 2470 G Master f2.8 is a very dated and expensive lens. The Tamron and the Sigma perform better than the G Master. There's a lot of focus breathing with the G Master. There's a bit of chromatic aberration. It's not as sharp. They're due for an upgrade, and that's why Sony actually released the 70 to 180, 70 to 180, the 70 to 200 G Master G2 version. So that's why they updated their G Master range, because I guess it lacked a few things. That autofocus wasn't fast. They just sharpened everything up. So hopefully the 24 to 70 G Master will be better in the second version. But hey, it's going to drive the prices down of the old G Master lenses. So yeah, why not? Okay. Ego Wanderer, using active tracking from the Raven Eye and the RSC2 with the Xperia 1 Mark II or 3 5G 6 is possible to connect these three to go live streaming. I'm not sure where that context came out of, but that's cool. Awesome. Eagle Byaki, in terms of lighting, if you had to build up a kit from zero for your use, what would you get and why? Very, very good question. And I really stress that people invest a lot more time in learning lighting and lighting techniques, because when you're trying to film, you're filming something for a 2D picture. If you literally just shoot flat lighting all the time, you're not really showing that depth. Sure, you can use a lot of depth through cinematography techniques with having something in the foreground like this. So you're shooting through something, and then you've got me as the midground and the background behind there. But with the lighting techniques and having contrast ratios, that is what sells it. But going back to what lighting kit I would do, I absolutely love the Nanlite 300B, mainly for the fact that it's a bicolor light. And 300 watts is more than enough for building room ambient tone, for using it as a key light, for using it as a moonlight outside. So having one major cob light, so cob light is chip on board. It's one of those LED, essentially it's just a fancy way of saying LED. That's what those new lights are like. So having one main cob light, and I would say at least one tube or a kick light. So having small LED lights like this are very, very, very handy, but also having the Nanlite 30C Pavo tube is really handy because you can use that as a key light as well, or even just the slight amount of rim. I've used that so much in my commercials, which is really, really, really good. The techniques on lighting has changed a lot because cinematographers are being given these cob lights now, whereas beforehand you would used to have the tungsten lights where you have the globes and they heat up, and then sometimes if you don't cool those lights down properly, the globes will explode. Then you have to replace the tungsten globes. And man, the things the older cinematographers has to go through is crazy. They're tough as nails, but now we're giving such awesome gear at the moment. And, you know, they're so cheap and they're so versatile. You can put them in so many different places. They're not as hot. The lighting that we get these days is just crazy. GB Walter, thank you for your comments. Sorry, I have to go outside and shovel my vehicle out of the snow. Man, Alaska. Thank you for -7 Fahrenheit. That is cold. Holy moly, that is cold. Yeah, we're like 30 degrees Celsius in here in Australia. Thanks for watching, man. Daylight's gone, 4:27 p.m. Nongrada Solo. Nongrada Solo. Hi, big fan of your muscles. Easy reach with the A7 IV. Thanks, man. Awesome. Yeah. Well, there should be pretty decent video quality streaming. It's 1080. It should be 1080. James, my man. Hope you're doing well, man. What is your go-to solution for protecting gear while transporting to and from set? I actually use power tool boxes. I'll show you. So these are actually power tool boxes, and I got them from Bunnings, or you could get them from, anyone else could get them from, you know, your hardware store. Not 100% sure what everyone else calls their hardware stores, but we call them Bunnings here. It's one of our major hardware store dealers. And this is actually a toolbox, but it opens up and you get a whole bunch of different options. And my one is completely modular, so I can put another toolbox on the top and click them together, which is really, really, really handy. And I've organized all these toolboxes to have specific amounts of gear. So one sort of flat toolbox will have like all my cords and stuff that I need, any sort of specific batteries, generally cords and batteries. Other boxes will have like smaller bits like my gels. I'll have gels in there and just bits and pieces. But if you have them in boxes, it just keeps everything together. And if you start like throwing stuff in your car bit by bit, it just becomes a bit tedious because you're going back and forward from your car to the set. And yeah, these things are worth their weight in gold. Definitely worth the money. Evermore Media, lots of people are complaining about issues with the A7 IV. Have you had any issues worth talking about? I haven't had any issues with mine. Yeah. Unfortunately, there's been a lot of beginners picking up the A7 IV and pretty much just having the cap on and sitting in their bed, going through the menus. It's overheating. And yeah, look, every camera has its issues. They're not perfect. The A7 IV is pretty damn good. And there shouldn't be too many issues that a lot of people are having. It's mainly just a lot of people are complaining about things that there are workarounds. So filmmaking is all about having problems and trying to find a solution for that problem. That's a big one. Bailey, what's up, man? Good to see you again. I wasn't going to do a live video today. This was just going to be a test video because this is my first video on this channel. James, that's a creative alternate option to Pelican cases. Yeah, man. Like, honestly, I weighed up the prices on Pelican cases compared to some of these cases, and I just really couldn't justify the price of Pelican cases. Sure enough, they're great because they've got so much padding in it. It's great to travel lenses with, but I only bring probably 4 or 5 lenses to a shoot anyway. Generally, like, it's sort of 3 or 4 primes and a zoom. And I'll actually travel just with a regular camera bag with all the lenses. And then everything else has got literally everything else. But yeah, Pelican cases can be a little bit overpriced. It's unfortunate. When it comes to tools, I think it's a lot of tradies don't want to pay money for expensive boxes. So they just produce them really cheap. And why not capitalize on those cheap prices of those boxes? Drew from the Brew Log says, hi, Bailey. Nice. You can definitely talk to each other in the comments. Do you know if there are any special external recording capabilities with the A7 IV with the Ninja 5? So at the moment, no, there isn't. So the A7 IV does have that large full-size HDMI cable. So it has the ability to transfer RAW through the HDMI, but it really depends on if Sony actually want to release that. But at the moment, you can't really do anything special as such through the Atomos Ninja 5 with the A7 IV, but you know, it's still, you still can record externally through that, and you can record ProRes as well. That's perfectly fine. Depends on the, you know, file sizes and what kind of codec you actually want to edit with as well. Zaria Multimedia, how you doing? When I connect my HDMI monitor to the A7 IV, I only get feed out to my monitor, not simultaneously. Yeah, so unfortunately, so a bit of context is what, with a lot of Sony cameras, when you connect an external monitor to that and you press record, the screen will go black. It's so frustrating. And I'm pretty sure it's just a firmware update for Sony. They haven't fixed this at all. The only cameras that do that is the cinema camera. So if I am recording through, I can record HDMI out and SDI out on this, and the screen will still stay on. So I'm pretty sure Sony are just limiting that because maybe they want to push it towards the FX6 and the FX9. It's not a processing thing because they both have the same processors. It could be a heat thing, maybe. Don't quote me on that. It could be a heat thing, but it is very, very, very frustrating. What you can do is you can actually monitor your phone or through your phone on top of your camera, and both of them will actually stay on. So if you're convinced that your phone is good enough as a monitor, that could be an option. George gave me $2. Thanks, man. Appreciate it. That's a coffee for the day. Cheers. Thanks, George. Sorry, is that HL Body? CG High Vor No Go. I'm sorry, I don't know what that means. Okay. Drew from the Brew. He's got a question. I don't know if you might have a solution, but would you have any advice for color grading and working with color when partially colorblind? Yeah, so I had a question with this before, and it was actually a guy asking about can he just get away with using S-Cinetone for color? Absolutely, you can. But when it comes to colorblind, there is one workaround, and that comes to looking at the histograms. It would be an absolute pain in the ass to learn. Histograms, the RGB vector scopes. So if you're looking at the red channel, green channel, and blue channel, you can judge your white balance by that. and it's so difficult to learn if you're colorblind. But if you I don't know, what do you say, color coherent, then it's hard, but you can learn it. But in terms of colorblind, yeah, man, sorry, I don't have a solution for that, but that could be the only solution. Is definitely go into your lumetri scopes and look into the waveforms, and you can see the color differences in the image, and you can kind of balance to that. Look, if you throw a Rec 709 LUT directly onto your S-Log image, you're going to get at least a decent amount of color that's kind of accurate, depending on what your white balance is in that situation. But yeah, that's a tough one, man, unfortunately. So yeah, thanks for the great answer and solution. Also, I can't get my Crane 2S to play nice with the A7 IV. Is this a thing? If you're connecting the A7 IV directly to the Crane 2S, then yeah, it could be just a firmware thing for Zhuin. They probably haven't updated their gimbals, but I don't generally connect my cameras to my gimbal. I just generally slap the gimbal on top and still control everything through the camera. Really depends on how you shoot. Gimbals aren't really a thing that I use a lot, but I definitely don't take advantage of the technology that's in the gimbal. I just use the gimbal as a stabilizer, and that's all I need it for. And yeah, do everything else through the camera. Jared Mech, is it Mechy or Mech? Some people who argue color science makes me feel like I'm colorblind, and I know I'm not. Honestly, Jared, look, color science is mainly a way of the past. It's when you were comparing Sony 8-bit to Canon 8-bit. Sony just had really, really, really bad shadow tone. When you raised the shadows, it generally had, some of them had like the black, like if this black shirt, it would come out almost purple in a way. And then they've changed it over to like a green hue, and it was, yeah, very difficult for Sony in terms of the 8-bit. When it comes to comparing camera manufacturers in 10-bit, there's almost no excuse for color science, because you've got so much color information to work with, the push and pull. And if you are a good colorist, there shouldn't be an issue with any camera when it comes to 10-bit and 12-bit. That's color science is, yeah, a very harsh thing that a lot of YouTubers pushed, and I suppose really shunned Sony for a very, very, very long time, because Canon actually push a lot of warm and purple tones in their skin tones, which technically, apparently, this is what I've heard and what I've read, that it's not color accurate, but it's more pleasing to the eye. So your skin tones aren't naturally in that color spectrum, whereas Sony's colors were more accurate, but not as pleasing to the eye, which, yeah, 10-bit should be fine to color grade anyway. Do you prefer S-Log 3 or HLG 3? I prefer S-Log 3, mainly for the fact that I like to color grade to my own personal style. Plus, S-Log 3 gives you the biggest amount of dynamic range with your camera as well. So dynamic range is capture as much of the highlights and shadows as possible, so you don't get as much clipping. But each to their own. I did a color grading course at uni, and we learnt some pretty heavy color grading techniques, which was really, really, really handy. Drew from the Brew, perfect. I'll try that out. New to making short films, trying to get through the roadblocks. Yeah, man, tons of roadblocks when it comes to filmmaking. There's always problems, but you just got to find those solutions to those problems. I'll see what I can do with the histograms and waveforms. Yeah. No problems, Jared. If anyone can figure out, yep. George Arton. Hi, Jason. Just wondering what you think about Blackmagic 6K Pro. Have you played with it? Thank you for your amazing work. Yeah, Blackmagic 6K Pro is a fabulous camera. Honestly, the image quality that comes out of it is incredible. The workflow when you actually use DaVinci Resolve as well, because Blackmagic own DaVinci now, they work perfectly. The colors is phenomenal. Look, there are cons to pretty much every camera, and the Blackmagic 6K Pro It's just a weird form factor, but it really depends on what you're shooting it for, what you're using it for. Excuse me. And pretty much, yeah, just what are you filming? It doesn't have IS, so it's just like a regular cinema camera. It doesn't really have great autofocus. So do you have autofocus or manual focus lenses? But in terms of image quality, so good. Ricardo Mera. Hi, Jason. What do you think of the Laowa 9mm T2.9 for the A7 IV used in? Yeah, absolutely. So I did a video about this the other day, and the Laowa 9mm lens is great. I'll show you. It's this thing right here. It actually comes in a Pelican case itself, but look how small it is. It is such a small lens. Man, so it's full manual design. It's all metal. It's really solid, but it is a 9mm on APS-C. So if you use it in APS-C crop mode for the A7 IV, you're going to get like a 14 or is it 14 mil equivalent of 14.5 mil. So that is super duper wide. It's going to be a great lens if you're going to be using slow motion and for that really, really wide establishing shot or real estate stuff. Okay. Oh, he also said real estate, which one would you choose, S-Log 3 or S-Cinetone? So that's a different one, mainly for the fact that with real estate, you're working with indoors and outdoors. And if you're working with S-Cinetone, you've got a lower amount of dynamic range, which means you're going to be clipping a lot of the highlights, especially if you're trying to expose for indoors. So it depends on what lighting situation you got, but I mean, S-Log 3 all the way in terms of dynamic range, that's probably going to be your best option. Bailey, would you recommend, would you go prefer, okay, yeah, so film school or join a production company? That's a tough one. Look, honestly, if you really, 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 really want to be a filmmaker, you don't need film school. You learn a ton of stuff in film school that you can't learn anywhere else. Guarantee you can't learn anywhere else because you've got people who are extremely experienced teaching you these things. Unless you do bulk short courses everywhere. The great thing about film school is that you learn everything to do with almost anything, which is great, depending on which film school you go to. But look, getting that on-set experience, you can't replace that. It's just, yeah, I absolutely recommend getting on-set experience. That's for sure. So Zaria says, I've been customizing my shortcut buttons on the A7 IV for the last couple of days. What are your top 5 to go-to shortcut buttons while shooting a live event? So, okay, so one of the biggest ones is manual to autofocus switch. I really like going into manual focus to get critical focusing, and to pair with that, focus mapping. Focus mapping is by far the best feature and the most underrated feature in the A7 IV and should be in Sony's cinema cameras because I use it all the time. Another one is probably, what else? What else would I use? I don't really use APS-C crop mode as much. They're probably the two biggest things is changing it into manual and autofocus. White balance, having a specific white balance button because your white balance will change from scene to scene, especially if you are doing like a live event. There's so many random colored lights here and there and everywhere, and it's quite annoying. You really need to adjust that white balance. But I mean, unless you get auto white balance, you should be fine with that. Adventuring with Matthew James, I think Sony color straight out of the camera with no profile is virtually the same as Canon in the A1, A7 IV, and A7S III. Yeah, because Sony have actually updated to the 10-bit codec, and their colors are much better. Yeah, absolutely. Look, in terms of color science, look, if you're shooting 8-bit to 8-bit, there's a difference. If you're shooting 10-bit to 10-bit, you shouldn't have to worry because you've got so many more colors to adjust. And it's just, It's more so color science is subjective as well. I mean, if you've seen Joker, look at the colors in that in comparison to Back to the Future. The colors are completely different, and someone will hate it and someone will like it. So depends. Nabil Ahmed. I'm currently debating between the A7 IV and the A7 III. Will 10-bit make the difference versus the 8-bit? So yeah, I was just explaining that 10-bit to 8-bit, 8-bit to 10-bit is very big when it comes to pushing and pulling the colors as much as you can. So if you really need extreme color grading, or if you do a lot of short films with heavy color grading, then yeah, 10-bit is a game changer, because it's like, I think it's 1 billion colors versus 16 million colors. So you just have more colors to play with. Yeah, absolutely, James. That is a very, very good one. Thanks for dropping that in. So production companies tend to require you to know the basic industry standards, which is what film school does. So you learn so many more of the basics, which I absolutely recommend. Like you just learn so many more skills that you wouldn't normally learn in a film school than you would on a set, because I think before film school, if I didn't go and I tried to jump on a set, I would probably be laughed at, and you'd be making so many mistakes. Like I'm actually using my C stand for audio, but something as simple as having the knuckle on the right-hand side is a big thing. And I see a lot of YouTubers have the knuckle on the left-hand side, which is a very big no-no on set, because if you have the knuckle on the left-hand side, it's going to undo itself eventually. And you're going to be dropping a light or dropping something. It's just going to slide off. Having the knuckle on the right, but that depends on your teachers as well. You could learn that anywhere, but small little details like that you learn in film school rather than a film set. Another question for you. What are your thoughts on creating your own LUTs over purchasing LUTs from someone? Yeah, so that's a very interesting one. So honestly, if you don't have any LUTs at all, I would at least download the basic camera LUTs from your camera manufacturer. So if you got Sony, for instance, you go to the Sony website, download at least the Rec 709 conversion LUT. That gives you a starting point. If you are wanting to do a whole bunch of creative stuff, yeah, buying LUTs is a good idea, but it really depends on the style you're after. I personally just color grade my own stuff. So I use the Rec 709 conversion LUT, and then I start throwing my own color grading over the top. But it really depends on, color grading is a very difficult one, to be honest. Jesse C, what's up, man? Hey, Jason, just ordered the Atomos Shinobi for my A7 IV. Do you know if face detection works when using the monitor? I've heard an issue with the A7 III. So they actually, pretty sure they fixed that issue because it came down to the processor. So you can actually have face and eye autofocus with the external monitor now with the A7 IV. Ricardo, one more question between the SLR Magic Cine lens. I don't know if you have had the opportunity to test against the Mica Cine lenses, or Makey, it's actually called. Okay, so SLR Magic Cine lenses are great, but the Makey lenses are next level. They are so sharp, low chromatic aberration, low ghosting under bright lights. Really good contrast ratios, smooth focusing, great build. I can't say anything bad about the Makey Cine lenses. They're actually really, really good, and they're really cheap as well. So if you are going to go the Cine lens route and you want to go a budget one, Makey all the way, to be honest. Thanks, Drew. Thanks for the donation. Really appreciate it. Okay, so I'll get back to these questions until we get some more questions come through. So there was another question that I want to talk about, and this was Premiere Pro versus DaVinci. I've had this debate so much, and I know there are a lot of DaVinci users out there. I know there are a lot of Premiere Pro users out there. And honestly, it all depends on your workflow. DaVinci is free. You don't get as many options, but if you get the paid version, it still works out tons cheaper than Premiere Pro. But I'm a Premiere Pro user. I learned DaVinci at university. For the color grading aspect, I can't really edit in there as fast. I'm not really used to that software when it comes to editing. When it comes to color grading, it's the best platform ever. But when it comes to editing, I am super duper efficient with Premiere Pro, and I will find it, I'll waste time learning how to edit in another software because I've spent so many years perfecting my editing speed and techniques on Premiere Pro. It's kind of hard for me to switch. So yeah, drop a comment. You Premiere Pro or DaVinci? Nabil Ahmed is looking to upgrade from the A6300. I know the A7 IV just came out, but it is worth to jump over the A7 III. If I got the A7 III, I would get an extra lens. Yeah, okay, so that's a good thing. So look, if you got the A7 III and a lens, it would probably be the same price as the A7 IV. So it really depends on what you do. Are you a photographer? Are you a videographer? The A7 III will still get you tons great results. Like, I'm not selling my A7 III anytime soon. It's gonna last so many more years. It's such a great camera. So Ahmed Tarek says, can you tell me which lens is better, the Tamron 28-75 f2.8 or the Sigma 24-70 f2.8? Or the Sigma 28-70 2.8. Side note, Sigma 24-70 is very heavy. It's a beast of a lens. Really depends on, do you need that extra 4 millimeters of width? In all honesty, the 24-28 doesn't make a big difference when it comes to commercial work, because generally, if you want to go wide, you're going to go wider than 28 or 24. You're probably going to go 16 or 17, 18 or something like that. So I wouldn't really worry about the width of that. If you're a vlogger, you probably wouldn't be using a 24 mil as well. You'd be going, your 16 to 35-ish sort of range, or 16 to 20 is generally where it is. But in terms of better, depends on the price. The Sigma 24-70 f2.8 is probably the best lens for that price. But if you're looking for a really budget lens that is really good, Tamron 28-75 all the way. That's for sure. Drew from the Brew, DaVinci, because it was free. Absolutely. I can't believe DaVinci is free as well, and how much you can actually utilize for that free software. It's crazy. Unfortunately, with DaVinci, I'm pretty sure A7S III, FX3, A7 IV footage won't work in the free version. So you will have to buy the full version, unfortunately. I know the FX6 doesn't, MXF files. You have to get the paid version. Yes, James said Premiere Pro is the one for me, but DaVinci is great too. Absolutely. Honestly, the best editing software is the one that you can use the most efficiently, the fastest, and that works for your workflow. Doesn't matter what brand, what it is, as long as it's just another filmmaking tool for us filmmakers. And if it helps you in your workflow, go for it. Absolutely. Zaria, I want to do an event video. I just bought the A7 IV with the Sony 20-1.8. Yeah, that's a great lens, the 20mm f1.8, and the Tamron 75. What should my next lens be? Well, it doesn't look like you've got a long lens. So have you considered the Sony 85mm is really, really, really sharp. It's actually better than the G Master 1.4, but you could probably consider the Sony 85mm f1.8. You'd love it for, you'll see how much compression you get. It's such a great lens. Oh, thanks for the donation as well, Zaria. Thank you very much. But yeah, maybe the Sony 85mm. George, I started with Sony Vegas. Yeah, man. Spent 10 years on Final Cut Pro, another fabulous program. Decided to bite the bullet and went Resolve. Took out 3 projects to get efficient. Love it now. And it was Fairlight that pushed me. Yeah, absolutely. Like, Honestly, if I had the choice to start now, I would go DaVinci, mainly for that color grading aspect. I just love how much versatility you've got with the tools that's in there. It's so much easier to use. But I've just, I'm deep in the trenches of Premiere Pro and Adobe, and yeah, I'm stuck. I'm stuck. Pull me out. Jordan Visions, Premiere Pro, bought the new Mac. So, okay, that's interesting. So the new Mac M1 chips apparently can edit anything at full res, scrub through, which I'm very interested to see. But does that change when it comes to Premiere Pro, Final Cut, or DaVinci? I'm yet to see that as well. So that's interesting. Jeffrey Tao, hey Jason, hey man, how are you? Would you pick up the A7S III or the FX3? I've had this discussion quite a lot, and I would pick up the FX3, mainly for the fact that when I used it, and when I used the A7S III, I loved the workflow with the FX3. Like everything was just in the correct spot for video. When it comes to photos, like you do not have an EVF. So do you need an EVF or yeah, that's probably the biggest one is EVF. Do you need it? Do you not? But FX3, sorry, looks cool as well. Oh, my coffee's cold. Oh, that's horrible. Richard B, I installed DaVinci a while ago reading. Oh, sorry, I can't read today. I installed DaVinci a while ago, ready for practicing with, but I need to pay. Yeah, with the A7 IV. Yeah, unfortunately. Like your tutorial, Sheng Yuan Su Photography. Thank you very much. Do you know any dealer who sells Makey lenses in Australia? No, but I tell you what, George, if you go on the Makey website, you pay for it in USD. It actually, there's a weird thing on their website. Don't tell anyone that it works out to be cheaper if you pay it in USD conversion. So try that. Go on their website, put it into USD as much as possible, wherever possible, and it works out to be cheaper, that conversion rate. So don't know how that works, but you save about $200-300. That's for sure. That's a lot of money. Evermore Media, the free version of DaVinci doesn't work with, yeah, the A7 IV support 10-bit color. Yeah. Nabil Ahmed, is it Ahmed or Ahmed? I'm not a pro, but I shoot sports. Oh, rugby for university where I'm at. Cool, man. That's awesome. My go-to lens is the 24-105 f4, but if I went the A7 III, I would go the 70-200 f4. Okay. Yeah, man. 70-200 f4 is a great lens. It's got OSS as well. Sure, it doesn't have a fast aperture, but when you're it depends on depth of field as well. Like if you're at 200 millimeters, you're going to get some crazy autofocus backgrounds. Any advice on shooting in low light with the A7 IV and 85 millimeter lens in S-Log3? Absolutely. So I had a discussion with this last night with Andrew, and he's the same. We stick the ISO levels pretty much the whole time at base. If you keep your ISO at the base level as much as possible, you're going to get the best amount of dynamic range, and you're going to get the cleanest image. So the only way to counteract for that is lighting. You're going to have to bring lights in and try and keep your base ISO at 800. But I've said this as well, if you are a wedding videographer or someone who run and guns on the fly, that's when you are actually in a bit of strife because you can't add lights in sometimes. So I do suggest try and get that aperture as wide open as possible. Or lastly, bring up that shutter speed, that ISO. Unfortunately, that's where the FX3, FX6, A7S III has that dual base at 12,800, which you can throw that in as well. Yeah, Jeremy said Adobe Creative Cloud all the way. Absolutely. Like I use Lightroom and Photoshop as well. So that's why I'm sort of deeply into the trenches of Adobe. Oh, Zaria said, for your information, everyone, my Mac M1 cuts through 4K like butter. No problems at all. Yeah, I've absolutely heard that. The new silicon chips in the Mac M1 are apparently just insane, which is great. I love seeing the new technology coming out for us filmmakers, but it's quite expensive as well. Okay, so Jason, do you have the 50mm? Yeah. So I've got the E-mount 50mm Makey lens. I'll show you guys. So I don't know if anyone's seen my review of the Makey Cine lens, but yeah, this lens is great. Like I said, this the reason why I got E-mount is because I didn't want to have to get a PL mount or E-mount to PL mount adapter, and I didn't want to have to keep changing if I had a B cam, and I just wanted to throw this directly on. And if I wanted to have other lenses, I didn't want to have to keep taking it off. But yeah, the Makey Cine lenses are phenomenal. Such good performance. M1 Max Gold, JB the creator. Thanks for stopping by. Elias Rosario, R5C, no video. IBIS, yeah. So going back to the R5C that don't have IBIS and they don't have in-body variable NDs, which is really weird why they took IBIS away. Otherwise, it would almost be a perfect camera, to be honest. The R5C looks really enticing for a camera, for filmmakers as well, definitely. Mark B. Hey man, you based in Brizzy. Any advice on external monitor to pair up with the Sony A7 IV? Any advantages to the Ninja 5? Okay. So I've been using the Ninja 5 a lot with the A7 IV, but I've also been using my Portkeys HS7T, which is a 7-inch monitor by Portkeys. I only use that because I can do video out and it powers my video transmitter directly through it. But the Ninja 5 is really good, but there isn't really any advantages at the moment. Like if you do YouTube tutorials, for instance, and you want to record what's on your screen, that is a big, big advantage. And I'm pretty sure Ninja 5 or Atomos is the only company that does that. Correct me if I'm wrong, but yeah, you can record all your settings that you've got on there, which is kind of cool for tutorials. But other than that, it's a very loud fan monitor. It's very juicy. It loves to eat all the electricity. So, I mean, you could go a cheaper option. It really depends on you. Oh, it's actually one major advantage is that the Ninja 5 does HDMI in and also does HDMI out at the same time, which not a lot of monitors do, unfortunately. But that's very rare case that a lot of people need that. Justin Westcote, hey man, how are you? Apologies if this gets asked already, but the A7 IV bought the Sigma 24-70 2.8 as an all-round lens. What do you suggest as a great complementary lens to that? Yeah, that's a great question. Having a 24-70 is fabulous for almost everything. One question, it does depend on what you shoot, but I would suggest a prime lens. So going a APS-C wide lens, so you can shoot slow motion, or going a portrait lens. I've never really regretted getting my Sony A7 1.8. Having that 1.8 for low light, depth of field, and that sharpness. Yeah, it's great. So maybe a prime lens. I'd probably suggest a prime lens if you do, want to have some sort of portrait focal length. Nabil Ahmed, hey man, I appreciate you doing this. I've been struggling debating between the A7 III and A7 IV. I actually bumped into you a while ago, looking it up on your YouTube. Seriously appreciate you. Thanks, man. I really appreciate you watching, and it's really kind words. I love all you subscribers. It's great. Ricardo Mira, thanks very much. I have a clear what I'm going to buy, the Makey 50. Yeah, email. Cool, man. Greetings from Ecuador. Man, that's cool. Love it. Great football over there. Jordan Visions, M1 Max is awesome, but definitely the most expensive laptop I've ever bought. Yeah, I heard it's so expensive. As a PC user, I keep hitting the wrong buttons. Absolutely. So I've got a PC. I switched from Mac ages ago, but I've got a Mac, uh, what is it, Mac Air in 2015, a laptop that I just travel with sometimes just to use Microsoft Word, to be honest. And I have my storyboards on there when I go to set. So it's just something there I can throw up. And yeah, all the time you go from, it's like, what's Control Alt or Control Copy? It's like, different buttons. Damn it. I think Mac has to be different. In saying that, I switched to the iPhone. So I looked on my iPhone previously. It was iPhone 5. From iPhone 5, I switched to Android, so the Samsungs and all those kind of other Androids. And I finally just went back to the iPhone 13, mainly for the fact that a lot of commercials that I make, some of the products only accept iPhone. And yeah, I always had to ask Andrew for his iPhone on some of the things, but yeah, quite annoying. Anyway, Zaria Multimedia says, what about touch focus and touch tracking for external mode? Okay, yeah, so that is difficult. So I've ran into a few issues with the Ninja 5 and, connecting it to the A7 IV. You can't, because the screen blacks out when you press record, you can't touch the focus on the monitor. I know there are some certain monitors that actually connect to your camera and you can have full functionality in your monitor, but I'm not sure which ones they are at the moment. But I said this a little bit earlier. You can actually connect the A7 IV directly to your smartphone. You can use an app called Monitor Plus. There is a paid version, which gives you false color, zebras, everything, all the bells and whistles. And you can touch to focus on your phone and your A7 IV stays on as well. The downside is you're to Bluetooth, so you may drop in and out of bits and pieces, like it may cut out a bit, but I haven't really had any issues, and it could be a decent option if you did want to use touch to focus. Going through the app could be that fix for you. Columbia Sounds Mastering, welcome. Thoughts on using the Atom X, which I think is a switcher, is it? Power Base Edge V-mount battery, and the Ninja V with the A7 IV. Honestly, I don't know what the Atom X is. Atom X. What's the Atom X? But V-mount battery I use every single time with the A7. Well, not every single time, but majority. So I use the IDX Tech V-mount batteries. Absolutely fantastic, but you do need to purchase a V-mount battery plate and then attach it to some rails, and then you can actually, power your camera, you can power your follow focus, you can power your monitor, you can power pretty much anything. You can put your phone on there and power it through USB, which is great. But yeah, that actually generates less heat for the camera as well, can last longer. So many pros. Ange WK says, how does f1.4 compare to f1.8? Do we need until f1.4 level for night shooting? Okay. It depends. If you're a run and gun shooter, f1.4 to f1.8 could be a big difference, but not big enough to notice, crazy amounts of grain or digital noise. Honestly, with night shooting, I still recommend try and light the subject as much as possible with external lights. Lighting is absolute key because you still want to try and keep your camera's ISO level at the base level as much as possible. But shooting at f1.4 has the cons of having a very, very, very shallow depth of field. Literally, I'm shooting in f1.4 right now. And it's focused on my eye. I can see the A7 IV working on my eye, but like the depth of field is like this. So you just have to be aware of that. If you are a manual focuser and manual focusing on f1.4, you're going to have a lot of troubles. I don't know if you guys have seen, was it Army of the Dead by Zack Schneider? Crazy. He shot on a f9.5 lens. I think it was like a Canon vintage lens, and everything was out of focus. I feel so bad for the first AC. I'm like trying to focus in and out when the actors are moving in and my God, that's a headache. Everything in that film was just out of focus. It's took me out of the story, unfortunately. So yeah, I mean, I know it's a filmmaking technique, but I didn't enjoy it, unfortunately. Thanks for answering that, James. Cool. Very, very good to have you here. I might get you on one day, James. That sounds good. Jordan Visions, you're using phone and monitor plus. It's great. Yeah, see, there you go. So if you do have the A7 IV or any other Sony camera, it could be a good option to have, that Monitor Plus app and then stream it through your phone. Like, it's really good. I actually had a subscriber tell me about Monitor Plus because I was using the Image Edge app. And that's still fine, but it doesn't have false color or any, bells and whistles and stuff because I use false color all the time when it comes to exposing my image. And yeah, that's the con of the Image Edge app. Mark Forst, thanks, man. How are you? Do you have any experience with long lens vibration in windy conditions? I use the A7 IV with the 200 to 600G. Woo! Shoot wildlife here up in Queensland. Man, that's a long lens. That's a big lens. Yeah, that's a tough thing. So IBIS will definitely help, and so will active steady shot when you have longer lenses. But yeah, I don't shoot any longer than 200 mil. So I don't have any wildlife experience. The only wildlife experience I have is at the zoo. Yeah, in terms of photography, I used to do a lot of portrait stuff, weddings and stuff. But yeah, the only way you could get away with that is tripod, monopod, or cradling the front of the lens and trying to hold it as steady as possible. I know. Even using it like a sniper rifle, resting the barrel of the lens on something, a sandbag or a bag, that could help. But definitely having IBIS on will help, and obviously a faster shutter speed as well. There's nothing else I can say with that one, Mark. Sorry. Danny Black, you're still here. Man, you've been here for a long time. I've been here for, I'm going to call this quits at 2 hours. How about that? So any thoughts on Casey Neistat film school thing? Yeah, so that's interesting. I'm pretty sure everyone knows who Casey Neistat is by now. If you don't, he was the OG when it came to vlogging and storytelling. He was probably the best, or still is probably the best vlogger, YouTuber on the planet. Hands down, amazing at storytelling with the basic film gear, because him and his brother, were filming since they were literally kids, and they were phenomenal when it came to that. But in terms of film school, look, he will probably just teach the basics and go through all, storytelling is king and all that kind of stuff. If you don't have any knowledge, then learning something else on top of what you know is always the best. I absolutely recommend investing in yourself always. That's why I spent a ton of money going to university. I went to TAFE before university as well, so I did another whole year of study. The amount of hours I've spent learning a lot of other stuff on YouTube as well, I absolutely recommend upskilling yourself as much as possible. So if you don't know anything, Casey Neistat's film school could be a really good thing, and especially getting some inside experience from himself. And if you are a vlogger, Casey Neistat's film school could actually be a really good option. But yeah, upskilling yourself is always a good thing. X-Way, hi Jason, love your video, man. Thank you very much for watching. Very practical and useful. A quick question though, for the A7 IV, I've seen a lot of people talking about that you shouldn't use the anti-dust shutter function. Yes, okay. So I made a video saying turn the anti-dust function on, but since then I've had dust on my sensor every single time I change lenses. It kills me. So I've taken, I don't put the shutter down anymore. So I've turned it off, and I haven't had dust on my sensor. I don't know what it is, but In terms of shutter life, it shouldn't make a difference. I mean, unless you're physically touching that shutter, which definitely do not do. It should be fine. But also, I've been using this thing here. So this is called the Blower Baby by Nightcore. It's just a mini fan that helps clean your sensors and clean your lenses. It is so good. I used to have the rocket blower, had that for many years, but Nightcore sent me this and it's hands down so good. It is amazing. X-Way would also say, which is likely to damage the shutter and cause big troubles. Yeah, man. Yep. So that's what I'm talking about is I don't use that shutter dust protector anymore. I turned it off. And since then, I haven't had any dust go on my sensor. You really just got to be smart where you change your lenses as well. So big no-no is probably change your lenses and just sort of stand there like this. But if you do, just blow out your sensor. Blow out your sensor, have the camera upside down, blow it out so dust falls downwards. If possible, gravity kind of works like that. But yeah, give it a go. I turned that feature off. Anyway, James would love to join you on a chat one day. Absolutely. I would absolutely love to have you on here. That's for sure. Hopefully next time. This is my first live. So yeah, definitely next time. Danny Black, yeah, it's been nice having you on while working on the project. James Smith Films, love your content, man. Thanks, James. Rob Bristow, Mike Frost, I shoot rowing. Yeah, with it. There you go. So here's another experience. Yeah, monopod. Okay, so using a monopod for those longer lenses, yeah, absolutely great. I recommend that. I've got a monopod, but how many times have I used the monopod? I don't shoot sports or wildlife. So Jeffrey Tao, we work with Monitor Plus and it's really useful. Yeah, there you go. So that's good. One thing to note is that your phone is connected to another device via Bluetooth. So some interference will happen. Absolutely. So because you are connecting via Bluetooth, yeah, you can drop out a little bit, or you generally have the phone as close to your camera as possible. And it should limit that dropouts, but it's technology. It's likely to drop out. Aaron, what's up, my man? Long time no see. Yeah, absolutely. So Aaron and I go way back. Cool to see you on here, man. Ange WK, that's the thing called CMOS protector where you can attach the CMOS to protect against the dust. Okay. Yeah. Would you suggest to use it on it? I don't think so. For many years, people haven't been using any sort of dust protectors, and it's been perfectly fine. I think you've just got to be smart about where you change your lenses, how you change them, and just make sure you try and keep your sensor clean. Don't touch the sensor, obviously, but give it a bit of a blowout, and yeah, just limit the amount of time that you're leaving that sensor exposed as well. Generally, you'll have a lens ready, opened and ready, and then you'll take the other lens off, click it straight on. That's probably your best option, to be honest. James Smith Films, does everyone from Australia go to Bali for holiday? Last time in Bali, I met so many cool creators from Australia. Absolutely. Bali is like a rock throw away from Australia. So it's very cheap to go there, and it's a brilliant place to go there. So if you haven't been to Bali, I absolutely recommend. Jordan Vision. So, yep. Come in. On the live stream. Okay. Yeah, come. You got a package. Thank you. Package. Don't know what. Have a look. Should I unbox it in front of the camera? Do I know what it is? So Jordan Vision said, side note, you can use the Monitor Plus on Android with USB. Okay, yeah, good. That's cool, man. So that's a really good thing to note, is because you won't have any dropouts. It'll probably have less latency as well if you are using it tethered directly to the camera, and it's just going to be like using your HDMI cable through a monitor. Have you thought about running any workshops or teaching anything virtually? That is a difficult thing. I feel like if I ran a workshop, yeah, absolutely, it would be in person. I don't feel right doing like a film school as such or an online tutorial, because I give a lot of free advice on YouTube and I love doing it. But if I had a workshop, I could give personal advice, and I feel like that's probably worth more money and more time. And I would love to do that more. Maybe in the future, yeah, run a workshop or something. That'd be cool. I'd really like that. Aaron, I need some tips from you on studio design. I'm this close to tearing up my whole studio to get my live stream background looking as nice as this does. No, man, this is just with a tricky G Master f1.4 lens. Blur out the background so you can't see it. This is just a quick setup that I actually set up for Andrew Murphy's live stream last night. And I don't know if it's going to be 100%, but looks nice. I don't mind it. But thanks, Aaron. In terms of tips, I don't know. It really comes down to space. I've got the 24mm lens, so I feel 24 is as wide as I would like to go. I do have a fairly large studio, so my studio is, I think, 6.5 meters long. I'm not sure how many feet that is, sorry, but it's quite a long studio. So it looks like I've got a lot of depth, but I guess lighting, got a couple of lights up there, and that tube light and my key light and kick light, maybe lighting. Yeah. Yes, have the cap lens off. Would you be up to Brizzy creator meeting? Yeah. Okay. Thanks, Danny. Yeah. So that's a good one. A Brizzy creator meeting is interesting because I don't know if you guys are in like YouTube groups on your countries, but some of them, you get some people that are serious and you get some people that aren't serious. There isn't really much in Australia, which is very unfortunate because there's a lot of awesome creators, but they're really hard to find. See, I'd actually love to have a creators meetup and bring a few of my creative mates and, create some cool stuff. That'd be awesome. Any advice on great color grading monitor? Okay, so this is a big one. Color grading on a regular monitor, it's average because you don't actually have true colors. You need a color accurate monitor, and they're very expensive. And honestly, I don't have one. There is a bit of trick that I do is I will color grade it as best as I can through lumetri scopes and the waveforms, make sure it looks nice to my eye, export it and look at it on my laptops, both laptops, my Windows laptop and my Mac laptop, and see what the colors look like on screens, because you have to remember people are watching this on different screens. Even watch it back on an iPhone, watch it back on your smartphone, because the colors could look different depending on the device. Man, that's why I can't really justify a color accurate monitor as yet, but I also can't justify it because I'm not a professional colorist. That's a whole nother profession. And I'm not doing, full length color grading films. So, need to get some sleep now. Thanks, Jordan. Thanks for joining in. Let's unbox this thing. Hey, let's see what's in here. We'll be on here for another 7 minutes, I think. What do you think is in this box? Good question. If it is, so the big thing about YouTube is that you get a whole bunch of collaborations from companies. And I'm at the point now where I can say no to a lot of companies, but I'm at the point now where I can charge companies money, mainly for the fact that I spend so much time planning and making these videos that I need to be, compensated for this time. And that's definitely fair. I pay thousands of dollars for my degree. I pay thousands of dollars for my gear. Sending me a $300 item sometimes just doesn't cut it. But yeah, I have a few companies that reach out, and some of them are great, some of them are shit. But this one, this one I have been waiting for a while. So this is the Feiyutech Scorp. So this is very similar to the Zhiyun Crane 3S. So this apparently has a slightly better payload than the Crane 3S. So it'll actually take this whole rig, the FX6, literally as is. That's how I would normally fly it on the gimbal. Actually, no, minus the base. Essentially, I take off the base and fly the gimbal. Fly it like that on the gimbal.